Coming up, a congressman tweets leads to charges of bigotry and racism, but he's not backing down. He's doubling down. Is it a sign of white nationalism? Is it going mainstream? Congressman Steve King doubling down today on a tweet in support of a far-right politician and drawing fire from some Capitol Hill colleagues. Let's discuss now. CNN political commentators Bakari Sellers and Andre Bauer. Also former Congressman Jack Kingston, who was a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, and CNN political contributor Maria Cardona. So good to have all of you on. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and lady and gentlemen.
Hey, Don.
Thank you. Bakari, Republican Congressman Steve King, sparking that controversy tonight for his tweet about the far-right Dutch candidate. He's talking about Kurt Wilders. King wrote this. He said, Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. Then he doubled down on those comments on CNN's New Day.
I've said to them, you cannot rebuild your civilization with somebody else's babies. You've got to keep your birth rate up, and that you need to teach your children your values. And in doing so, then you can grow your population and you can strengthen your culture, you can strengthen your way of life. If you go down the road a few generations or maybe centuries with the intermarriage, I'd like to see an America that's just so homogenous that we look a lot the same from that perspective. This Western civilization still is a superior civilization.
So, Bakari, does he understand that those comments are, I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think Steve King was racist a year ago. He's racist today, and he'll be racist tomorrow. Somebody else's baby, I mean, those are black and brown babies. I mean, let's just cut through the BS that he spewed and reinforced today. That language is very, very dangerous. And the reason that I say that, Don, and the reason that we have to be careful about normalizing this, and we have to stamp out that type of naked xenophobia and bigotry, is because there are young people right now who might be in his district in Iowa, who are on a website looking at the comment boards of Breitbart or the Council of Conservative Citizens and listening to a member of the United States Congress say something like that, and that young boy can grow up to be the next Dylan Roof. So I have no tolerance for his bigotry. I have no tolerance for his racism. The Republican Party has a problem, and that man's name is Steve King.
Yeah, Congressman. Well, go ahead. Who's agreeing? Was that you, Congressman, or?
No, but I will be happy to weigh in here. I do think it's a topic that we should be talking about in America, and I'm glad that we're doing it on your show, Don. You show you're always not afraid. But let me say this. I know Steve King. I served with him. He's not a racist. I actually called him tonight or earlier today and said, what is this about? And what his point is that when you bring in another culture to your culture, what you want to do is assimilate it. You want to mainstream them. You want these new immigrants, wherever they come from, to buy into the American dream and share in the great opportunities that we have. And I think in terms of his comment about a homogenous society, what he was talking about is interracial relations, marrying each other so that our great-grandchildren don't see people and see Japanese-American or Italian-American or African-American, that just simply they see Americans. So
what he specifically said was rebuilding our society with somebody else's babies.
But Don, hold on one second, because I have a great deal of respect for Congressman Kingston, and I'm not sure he completely understands what he's saying. I mean, we all have racial blind spots. Don't get me wrong, and I think you just pointed that out right there, because that in itself, and the hill that you're dying on for Steve King, and the justification that you gave when you highlighted interracial marriage and this commingling of cultures as something that is a problem, is something that is degenerative to our culture. I mean, homogeny.
He wasn't saying that was a problem.
I don't think that's what I think he's saying he wanted more interracial intermingling. That's what he said.
Yeah, what he was saying is
make
get
us
over
all
the
look the same.
Italian American, get over the African American. Let's all just be Americans and date each other and marry each other and get behind this great nation together.
Congressman, I don't see where that's a problem. And Maria, what you said, that, it's got to be. Why does it have to be interracial? Listen, I'm all for it. You can date and marry and love whoever you want to, whether that's black, white, I'm down with it. But we don't all have to marry someone out of our race to be accepted in America. Maybe someone wants to marry an Italian person. Maybe someone wants to marry an Hispanic person. Maybe someone wants to marry a white person. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I hate this whole idea of being colorblind, because you see what people's colors are. I don't mean you should be discriminatory, but I want to see that Maria is a proud Latina. and that she's a
Absolutely.
beautiful Latina woman, and that
you.
Andre is a handsome white man. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean
No,
I'm going to
wait.
discriminate
He is not
against
handsome.
them.
She is beautiful.
There's, I think,
There's nothing
there,
wrong
I
with seeing
think-
that. Go ahead.
That's exactly right, Don. And in fact, I think you hit the nail on the head because, you know, while most people in America, and I would even put, you know, Republicans in there as well, do believe that diversity, the kind of diversity you are talking about, Don, is actually one of our country's greatest strengths, because with the richness of backgrounds that we all bring, from ethnic to country of origin, to communities, to economic, to religious, all of it really brings to this country a richness and a robust diversity of thought and innovation. You know, Steve Jobs' father was an immigrant to this country. If not for him, we would not have the iPhone. And so these are the kinds of things that somebody like Steve King, who is so close-minded, doesn't not only not understand, but he believes that it is a threat to what he calls Western civilization, which is just a dog whistle for complete and total racism and bigotry.
Okay, stand by. When we come back, we're going to hear from the handsome white guy for the Republican response. We'll be right back.
That would not
Thank
be
goodness.
me.
We'll be right back. And we're back discussing Congressman Steve King under fire tonight for that controversial tweet. Back with me, Picard Sellers, Andre Bauer, Jack Kingston, and Maria Cardona. So, Andre, House Speaker Paul Ryan denounced King's comments today and said he may have misspoken. Take a listen.
I disagree with that statement. I haven't seen the context, but I disagree that we're a melting pot. I would like to think, and I haven't spoken to Steve about this, I'd like to think that he misspoke and it wasn't really meant the way that sounds, and hopefully he's clarified that.
Okay, but then here's what Congressman King said.
Well, of course, I meant exactly what I said, as it always is the case, Chris. And I've said the same thing as far as 10 years ago to the German people and to any population of people that is a declining population that isn't willing to have enough babies to reproduce themselves.
So it's pretty clear, Andre, what King, that he didn't misspeak. Should he be censured by Congress for those comments?
Well, first and foremost, I would say no, he shouldn't be, Don. Yet what's great about this country is everyone's entitled to voice their opinion. And we don't have to agree with them. And I don't want to shut anybody down from speaking what they think. And the wonderful thing about Congress is they're up for election every 2 years. And if the people of his district don't agree with him, they can send him home and replace him. But for people to be vocal and to talk about things that they think are improvements to this country as part of our system of government in Washington, there are a lot of people that say things that I don't agree with, but I don't want to censor them every time they say something that is politically insensitive or I do disagree with.
That's absurd. I mean, the fact that we're having this discussion and
Yeah.
neither Republican on here wants to actually have the courage, and I like both
Yep.
of them, but neither one of them want to have the courage to call out bigotry, xenophobia, and racism, and like that's a casual
Well,
part
I'll
of
tell you why,
conversation.
Bakari.
That's
Let me
not
tell
what it
you
is.
why. Bill,
And not only
let me
that,
tell you why.
but go ahead. Tell me, please.
I'll tell
me
you
what.
why. Because as a Trump supporter, I have been called a bigot, a homophobe, a racist, and everything else under the sun for the last 6 months, to the extent that the left has overplayed the card.
Do you want me to tell you why? You want me to tell you why? Hold on, both of you. Hold on. Let me tell you something, Jack. Listen, I know you, and I don't think that you know those things that you pointed out. I don't believe them to be true. But here's why. Because every single time an issue comes up similar to this or something just absurd that Trump or one of his supporters says, you defend it. You never say that they're wrong, or rarely, if ever. You never call it out for what it is. Yes, I do think that sometimes people overplay the race card, but in this particular instance, it is glaringly obvious that if he is not racist himself, he said something that is racially insensitive.
Don, let me say this. I'm the only one on the show who's talked to Steve King about this. And what he told me, he said, you know, I'm limited to 140 characters. If I had my choice, I would do it over and I would say, unless we adopt those babies. And when he says that, what he means is culturally bring
he told Chris
into
Cuomo, Jack, that he would say it again, and that
I'm just saying,
he doesn't take back what he said.
A year ago, this is the same person.
Could adopt those babies.
A year ago, this was the same person who said that he was trying to figure out what subgroups outside of whites actually contributed to civilization. And the fact is, Congressman Kingston, like, I don't want you to be a superhero. I don't want Andre Bauer to go out and be a superhero and save and adopt babies, but I do want you to have the courage to stand. No, I want you to have the courage to stand up and fight racism and hate and xenophobia. This is absurd. I'm tired of this.
As reprehensible as Steve King is, you at least got to give it to him. You know, to Bakari's point, he has not changed his principles. He has not changed his values. He has been a bigot, and he has been a racist, and he has been a xenophobe all of his public service life. And so him doubling down on his comments, at least you can say about the guy, he knows where he stands, which is you cannot say that about every single Republican leader out there who has not denounced him, who has not walked back those comments.
I've got to go, but listen, my advice is that sometimes you have to call it for what it is, and you cannot defend everything because someone happens to be a Republican or someone happens to be a Democrat or someone happens to be your president. If they say something stupid, if they say something bigoted, if they say something racist, then call it for what it is. You don't have to defend it every time and then do backflips to make an excuse for what they said.
One other thing.
I got to go.
Okay. He's pro-life, and he's pointing out that we have a board.
Let's go to break. Let's go to break.
Jack, we need a snow shovel. You don't need another shovel to dig yourself deeper in. Thank you.
Not helping.
There's a big storm coming. There's a big storm coming here. We're going to talk about that. We'll be back.
Of the Bergen record there, because the Democrats won't accept President Trump, the administration is going back after them. Is that what this is really about? Tit for tat? Conway responding to questions about that interview this morning. Here's what she had to say.
Specifically, do you know whether the Trump Tower was wiretapped? And you answered by citing this report about the CIA techniques revealed by WikiLeaks. Why would you make a suggestion like that without any evidence?
I wasn't making a suggestion about Trump Tower. These are two separate things.
That's what you were asked about.
And I answered him about surveilling generally.
But you have no evidence that that kind of surveillance was used against Trump Tower.
I have no evidence, but that's why there's an investigation in Congress. That's particularly what investigations are for. And I would note that Director Comey has asked the Department of Justice to make a comment, but he hasn't made a comment. I noticed yesterday on your show with Congressman Schiff that he said he plans to ask Director Comey about this.
All right, Kellyanne Conway later tweeted saying, on wiretap claims, I have said many times that we are pleased the House, Senate Intel committees are investigating and will comment after response to Bergen record was about surveillance articles and news and techniques generally, not about campaign. Headline, just wrong. Kellyanne Conway wants to clear this up. She's just moments away from being on the show, so you'll get to hear from her directly, and we will test the position. Right now, let's bring in Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on the show. You have your own comments to explain this morning. You tweeted support of a Mr. Wilders, who's running for prime minister in the Netherlands, and you wrote that Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We cannot restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. This is being condemned by many regions of American politics and citizenry. What did you mean?
Well, of course, I meant exactly what I said, as it always is the case, Chris. And to expand on that a little further, I've been to Europe and I've spoken on this issue, and I've said the same thing as far as 10 years ago to the German people and to any population of people that is a declining population that isn't willing to have enough babies to reproduce themselves. And I've said to them, you cannot rebuild your civilization with somebody else's babies. You've got to keep your birth rate up, and that you need to teach your children your values. And in doing so, then you can grow your population and you can strengthen your culture, you can strengthen your way of life. And that's not happening in any of the Western European countries. France comes the closest to having a birth rate that's a replacement rate, but it's a clear message that we need to get our birth rates up, or Europe will be entirely transformed within a half a century or a little more. And Geert Wilders knows that, and that's part of his campaign and part of his agenda.
Right, but if you want to apply that kind of thinking to America, it seems like a complete contradiction of what we're all about. I mean, this is the melting pot. We are known by those countries that you just mentioned as the bastion of diversity. It is an unqualified strength for us, and it sounds like you're trying to kind of white cleanse our population and saying somebody else's babies. I think that means me, Congressman. I'm only second generation in this country. Who's somebody else's babies?
Chris, We're a country here that, if you take a picture of what America looks like, you can do it in a football stadium or a basketball court, and you see all kinds of different Americans there. We're pretty proud of that the different looking Americans that are still Americans. And there's an American culture, an American civilization. It's raised within these children in these American homes. And that's one of the reasons why we require that the President of the United States be raised with an American experience. But we've also aborted nearly 60 million babies in this country since 1973. And there's been this effort that says we're going to have to replace that void with somebody else's babies. And that's that push to bring in much illegal immigration into America, living in enclaves, refusing to assimilate into the American culture and civilization. Some embrace it, yes, but many are 2 and 3 generations living in enclaves that are pushing back now and resisting against the assimilation. It's far worse in Europe than it is today here in the United States. But I want us to be looking at that, promoting the birth rate in America, restoring the rule of law, putting an end to illegal immigration, and recognizing that we need to be a country that's pulled together on similar values. That makes us stronger.
That's the exact point. I mean, because it seemed like you were doing the opposite. Like you were trying to say someone else's babies means you're either white or you're not right. And as you know, that is anathema to what America's all about. Can we get agreement on that?
Well, here's actually, if you go down the road a few generations or maybe centuries with the intermarriage, I'd like to see an America that's just so homogenous that we look a lot the same from that perspective. I think there's been far too much focus on race, especially in the last 8 years, and I want to see that put behind us, and I want to be us bonded together. I gave a speech on this on Saturday, and half the liberals got up and left the room when I talked about
because
the
when you
success
say,
and
when you
unity and
suggest
putting
to
an end to the
anybody,
divisions.
but when
They're
you
looking for hatred is the point, Chris.
But hold on a second. Congressman, if you suggest that somebody else's babies shouldn't be welcome in a country, you seem inherently divisive. That's why I keep asking you, what was your intention with this? And you keep to seem doubling down on it. I mean, you said America's got lots of different faces, that's fine, but you keep making this point that this country needs to be about white people raising their birth rate and not bringing in other people. That's exactly what America is not.
But Chris, I never have made that point. I've never said that. I've been characterized as saying that. I've had the blogs out there say I said that, but I tell them, go back and watch the tape, listen to it, just listen to the language. Our language is precise. That's not out there. But I did defend Western civilization that started this last summer at the Republican National Convention. And when I said Western civilization, that launched people that are opposed to Western civilization. That's a big problem. If we have an element of Americans here, and it's a big element, that reject Western civilization, then what have we? This is an effort on the left, I think, to break down the American civilization and the American culture and turn it into something entirely different. I'm a champion for Western civilization. And yes, our English language is a big part of it. It's a carrier of freedom. Right. Wherever the English language has gone globally, freedom went with it. And science, technology has always lifted up the standard of living on average of everybody on the planet. So I want more of that, not less. And there are civilizations that produce very little, if any. This Western civilization still is a superior civilization, and we want to share it with everybody.
All right, you're entitled to your opinion about all these things, obviously. I just want to go back at this one more time, just because it's that important. A Muslim American, an Italian American, a Christian American, a Jewish American, you do realize that they are all equal, right? They are all the same thing. We don't need babies from one of those groups more than we need them from other groups. Do you agree with that?
Well, I would say that it depends
Why do you pause on a question like that,
families.
Congressman? What do you mean? It doesn't depend on any definition.
Because
you're
I
either
want
an
to give
American
you
or you're
an
not.
objective answer, Chris.
Yeah, but either a Muslim American, an Italian American, an Irish, Scotch, German American, which is what your roots are, either those are all equal things or they are not. What is your answer?
They contribute differently to our culture and civilization. There are moderate Muslims that are equal to, in all these categories.
I said a Muslim American.
There are
people who
others,
have
Chris,
lived here who are assimilated.
In their families.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people teaching hatred in their families who are white, who are Irish, who are Italian, who are Muslim. A lot of people preach hate. There's hate in a lot of different groups. And I get that you have Muslim extremism, that there's a concern in this country about. But I asked you something else. These people are either all equal or they are not, in your view. A Muslim American, an Italian American, German American, like you and your blood, your roots, they are either all equal or they are not in your mind. What is the answer?
I'd say they're all created in the image of God, and they're equal in His eyes. And if they're citizens of the United States, they're equal in the eyes of the law. Individuals will contribute differently, not equally to this civilization and society, and certain groups of people will do more from a productive side than other groups of people will. That's just a statistical fact. And so,
but it's not as a function of race, it's as a function of opportunity and education. You're not more likely than a Muslim American to contribute to American society. It's about your education and your opportunity, not what your blood is.
Chris?
Yes.
Chris, it's the culture. It's the culture, not the blood. And if you could go anywhere in the world and adopt these little babies and put them into households that were already assimilated into America, those babies will grow up as American as any other baby, with as much patriotism and a much love of country as any other baby. It's not about race. It's never been about race. And in fact, the struggles across this planet, we describe them as race. They're not race. They're culture-based. It's culture, the clash of cultures, not the race.
All right, Steve.
And sometimes that race is used as an identifier.
Steve King, it's important. I wanted to clarify it. Thank you for coming on the show to do so. America is known for one thing, diversity as strength. Appreciate you being here. All right?